I really enjoy tinkering on my PC and trying to make it as optimal as possible. It opens up a lot of possibilities when you have a PC because you can upgrade it as you want. But parts are expensive today. But I know having the machine available to you so that you can be creative and having all the right tools and the right power to do what you want to do really opens up a lot of possibilities for you. I know that because when I was a young kid, I begged my parents for a PC. And at the time I had an Amiga 500, so they didn't quite see the point because the Amiga could play more games than the PC could at that time. But I convinced them that was because I wanted to do more creative stuff. So they promised to buy me a PC if I could save up for half of it, and they would pay for the rest. A couple of months later, I got my brand new Tulip 486 PC with Windows 95. It doesn't sound like much right now, but at the time it was high tech. And even though, I'm not gonna lie, my general interest was in games, but it was also the place where I installed programs like Adobe Photoshop Deluxe and 3D Studio Max. And that was probably the stepping stone for the career I have today. If you want to see more videos on what I really do on a daily basis, you can go to my other channel where I publish a lot of tutorials and stuff. It's not as big and it's not as fun, but if you're interested in those types of things, that's a place to go. But this video is about building a PC. And I wanted to build a PC for someone who has helped me out a lot lately. And well, especially it's for her kids, because I want them to have the same opportunities that I had as a kid to be creative. Now, they're probably just going to use this machine mostly to play games on, so it's very important that it can actually do that. But what's more important is that it has to be able to like edit video, edit sound, do recordings, stream on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, and open up the possibilities for them to learn about these tools and learn how to use a PC. Because nowadays kids just sit on their iPads, and you can do a lot on an iPad, but really you're very limited in what you can really do on that thing. But buying a PC today is very expensive, especially if you wanted to be powerful enough to be a creative tool. So I want to see if I could build my own PC using used parts and stuff laying around, and see how far I can actually get and how low I can get on the sum. To start off, I tried to build a virtual PC using Build a PC GG and put together a machine with an APU from AMD and Ryzen 5th generation. An APU is like a GPU and CPU combined to save money because GPUs are expensive. But I still got a price around 650 euros. 900 if you put on a decent display, a keyboard and mouse. That's a bit much for a random gift. So I thought I can probably do better. So I went to Finn, which is our Craigslist, and I found a lot of machines on sale, but most of them were pretty old and not able to run things like Windows 11, and you probably couldn't upgrade them that much after they were done. I wanted this machine to be scalable over time, so you didn't have to exchange all the parts. But then I found a guy who had tried to build a mini PC for his mom, but he couldn't fit the GPU in the smaller case, so he gave up on the project. He put all the parts in a medium tower and put it on sale. Even though this motherboard is of the smaller kind with only 2 PCI and 2 RAM slots, it was still one of the newer models. It could run up to 11th generation Intel processors, and it could run Windows 11, and it was also VR ready, whatever that means. The PC was fitted with a 10th generation i3 processor, 8GB of DDR4 RAM, up to 266 Hz, and best of all, a small NVIDIA RTX 2060 from Gigabyte. I thought this would actually be a great starting point for a PC, but the price was already set at 600 euros, so I thought I'd just follow his process and see how it went. A couple of weeks later, he dropped the price to 500. A week later after that, he dropped the price to 450. I think the main reason people didn't quite latch onto this sale was because it was fitted with a hard drive of 128 gigabytes, and that's really small. He had also written that it came with pre-installed with Windows 10 Pro, but it was a non-activated version, which meant that you were very limited in what you could do with software. So I contacted the buyer and asked if he'd be willing to shave off another 50 euros of the price since the operating system wasn't licensed. He agreed, and I got the machine for 400 euros. Problem was, that was just for the machine. It had no extra screws, no manuals, it even didn't have a power cable, and the hard drive bay was missing its fitting rails. The SS3 drive installed was laying around completely loose next to this power supply. Not to mention, we also needed input devices and a screen. This machine would require some work. And first off was to get better storage. SSDs are not cheap, so I simply plucked out one of my own 500 gigabyte SSDs and popped that in instead. I also found a standard 1 terabyte SATA drive. Unfortunately, all of these were 2.5 models, so fitting them into the case would be an issue, because I had no extra SATA cables and places to mount them. So I had to buy some rails, and the only place I could find that was at AliExpress. I also got 3.5 mounting frames, SATA cables, screws, and other stuff from a normal hardware store. So that gave me places for 2 discs, and the last one I just simply glued with some double-sided Gorilla Tape in the chassis. Luckily there was some room because the motherboard is not very big. As for mouse and keyboard, I went back to Finn and found a couple of options, but I slowly started to realize that I didn't want this to be a dull black PC with a simple keyboard. It had to be a fun machine for the kids with all the bells and whistles like LED lights. But then I found a guy who sold a full set of PC accessories he didn't need. An old gaming mat, an old Razer keyboard with LED lights, a Razer Viper mouse, a 7.1 Razer headset, a simple 720p webcam for only 70 euros. And next was the screen. And luckily, I already had my old ViewSonic Samsung screen for just such an occasion. It's a simple 21-inch 1080p 60Hz screen, but with great image quality and more than enough of this build. Now the RTX only had display ports and HDMI ports, and the screen had DVI and VGA ports, but that's not a problem because I already own a DVI to DisplayPort cable that should work fine. Next was the internet. Yes, the machine had a local area network, but no Wi-Fi. Might be a problem for the kids because they're not necessarily situated next to the router. Luckily again, I had some old hardware lying around, like this old 5 GHz Wi-Fi extender from Comfast. The great thing about this is that it will also function as an access point for future VR endeavors. And we still had the issue with the OS, which was not activated, but through the power of the internet and Google searching, I actually found a site that sold licensed key legally at a really reduced price. I got a copy of Windows 10 Pro 64 bits for just 7 euros. How? I do not know, only that it works. So, for the parents' convenience, I created an account for the parents and a family account for the kids, and I also installed the family safe Open DNS on the local network, so it's nice and safe for shifty websites. So now the machine was built and I just needed to install the software I needed, or they needed. So I started installing all the usual suspects and also went to the Epic Store and created an account for the kids. There was still some times before I actually had to deliver the machine to them, so I just watched the free games list daily and downloaded some great free games. I also installed the free games that are always free, like Fall Guys and Fortnite, Roblox, and I also had a copy of Minecraft, which I put on the Xbox app. But as I said, what's really important, I also wanted to install some creative tools, like Unity, Unreal Engines, and Game Maker Studios, and a lot of other open source creative software for audio, video, image, and 3D editing, and of course OBS for streaming and recording. If you're interested to know what sort of open source programs I put on this PC, I'll put a list in the description with links. When benchmarking this machine, I realized that I wasn't quite where I needed to be for a creative tool PC. The CPU was simply not powerful enough. So I figured that this was probably the one place I had to put in some money. So I bought an i5 processor, but I put the old i3 processors on sale on Finn and luckily got back 60 euros of my 160 investment. And now the PC was generally ready for action. But for extra points, I added my old DVD USB burner that I had replaced with Blu-ray and a couple of USB speakers that I also had lying around. I'll also give them a redeem key for 3 months free of Xbox Game Pass, which I got with my Xbox controller. I already gave them a Xbox 360 controller that I hope they're still holding on to. And so far this was a good package. But the box was still a dull black box, and I figured it had to be something I could do. Unfortunately, the motherboard does not have any RGB headers, but I managed to find some RGB lights that could be powered through the USB. And after some fidgeting and welding broken strips, I think the box turned out quite nicely. So in the end, I put all the parts back in to build a PC GG and got an estimated total value of 1,789 euros. And what did I pay? Total value of 672 euros. That's close to 1,100 euros saved. So all in all, I'm quite happy with where I ended up building a PC from just used parts. Now we ended up with only 8 GB of RAM, which is probably the first thing they need to upgrade. But this machine runs high-end graphics on 1080p just fine. It would probably even run VR with just a bit reduced graphics. And I never expected to get a dedicated GPU at this price range. So here I have a finished, modern, high-end PC, which I'm gonna gift to my sister and her kids, because they have helped us out a lot with our young kids just by giving us hand-me-downs for hundreds of euros. And for the rest of you, that's my build. What do you think? Should I have just have gone with the APU Ryzen and just paid for that instead? Or did I end up with something sweeter just using used parts? Comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll guess I'll see you next time.